Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video review, take a look at the LG Gram 16. This is the 2022 model that retains LG's penchant for lightweight laptops with big screens. Let's face it, it's not easy to find a laptop that is 16 inches in screen size and weighs under 3 pounds, but that's the whole premise of LG's Gram laptops, is that they're going to give you size differences, size variations, and they're going to make them really light and portable, or at least they can feel pretty portable because of how light they are. This one is, now I had reviewed the LG Gram 17 before, and so I wanted the 16-inch model because I wanted to see kind of what the difference was in size. Did it feel any different? And I gotta say, it felt very, very similar in all the same ways that I expected it. So one of the things now, the portability being what it is, okay, we know that this doesn't weigh a whole lot. I mean, under 3 pounds at this size, pretty good. But the battery life is also a major, major factor for LG Gram's laptops, and I'm going to get into that. But first, I want to touch on what is different, which there's not a whole lot that has changed in the 2022 iteration of this laptop compared to the preceding ones. So there's a 1080p webcam, so that's kind of a big deal, especially if you are using this for video calls. I look at this laptop a lot like a work laptop, or if you're a student and you want something that lets you do various different tasks, so you're not really using it for one specific reason, you are doing different classes, different projects, different things. This is kind of the ideal laptop for that. For me, using this, and I knew this going in because, again, I had reviewed the previous LG Gram 17, I knew that this is not a, this doesn't have a specialty. This isn't a laptop with a specialty. This is not a gaming laptop, definitely not a gaming laptop, and it's not going to be, say, a graphics intensive laptop. That's not going to be something that you're going to use if you're a video editor and you're looking for, you may love the screen size, but with integrated graphics being what they are in this machine, the RAM maxing out at 16 gigs, I don't really think that this is for that. You can do some of that, don't get me wrong, but if that is, if that's how your bread is buttered, so to speak, this is probably not going to be the machine for you. That kind of leaves everybody else, and I think that's the whole purpose. And that's always been the purpose, I think, for LG's Gram laptops. And so when I use this thing, I used it with that in mind. So I would type up articles on here, I would browse, I would edit photos. Basically, my workflow being what it is in doing my job, I would do on here to see how it would be. And for the most part, I liked it. I felt that it handled a lot of those things well. I could have used a little more power or a little more RAM in some cases, especially if I was running multiple apps that needed a fair bit of memory at the same time. But again, this is a laptop with some trade-offs. And so you get the lightweight, you get the big battery life, but you may not get the serious power under the hood to let you do some of those intensive tasks. Okay, so apart from that, what do we have? We do have a nice display. I will say, this IPS panel is quite nice. It gets pretty bright, but perhaps not as bright as other laptops. I don't know. I thought it was bright enough. My issue was more so with the speakers. The speakers, while they sound okay, are not very loud, nor do they offer much bass response. They're also kind of down-firing speakers, so when you have your laptop set down, especially on a table, you'll notice that I think what LG was trying to do here was by pushing the sound down, it's trying to create a little bit of a rumble to create that bass response. Interesting idea. I've seen speakers do this before, not so much on laptops, but you've seen it in some Bluetooth speakers that attempt to do that, but it's not as effective here. And so I felt like I had to raise the volume fairly often on this, especially when watching a movie or watching video. Again, you can always supplement that by using Bluetooth headphones, or you can plug in with wired headphones too. So there is a way around that, but I'm just pointing out that the speakers are okay, not amazing. I do want to talk about some of the software features that are involved here. It's hard for me to demo it, so I'm going to show you on video somewhat how LG portrays it and kind of talk about that. So LG Glance is kind of interesting. This is the idea where the front camera is basically looking at you and noticing what it is you are or aren't doing. So if you had a multi-screen setup, so let's say I have this laptop here and then I've got another external monitor over here, if I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at the laptop and then I look over at the monitor, it will move what I'm looking at over there. So essentially, the content that I'm looking at is following where my eyes are going. It's a pretty interesting idea, and I've seen it demoed before. I tried it out myself. It's not bad. It's pretty cool. I also liked some of the privacy features. You can either have it dim the screen, like so you look away, for example, the screen dims or it blurs. It'll do something basically to make it non-legible to anyone who's around you. If somebody's over your shoulder as well and they're looking at, you'll get an icon kind of warning you like, hey, someone's looking over your shoulder. So LG tried to implement some privacy features. They tried to also make glance adaptable, meaning that if you're on a video call, it'll kind of change your background. So basically whatever's in the background is kind of taken away and it replaces something else. It's an interesting mix of features that are involved with it, and again, they're useful. Not fully polished in my opinion. I think there are some kinks that can be worked out, but I think that also depends on how you see it as well. So for example, when using it as I described, when you're looking here and here, now it also depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to move the content over here, over there, if you want the mouse cursor or you want the cursor to move from here to there as well, there are different ways to do that. It involves pressing certain keys as well. So it's not as simple as just like looking and looking. You have to press certain keys so that it activates and then knows to do that. But again, once you get the hang of that, I think it's fairly straightforward. So again, you know, and I did mention keys, and I will touch on the keyboard just briefly. This is the exact same keyboard that was in previous models. So if you did not like it for whatever reason, nothing's changed here. I personally don't mind it. I found that I got used to typing on it fairly well. The key travel works for me. It may not work for you. My sort of challenge with the trackpad, which I felt was a little too sensitive by default, I had to adjust that. It's fine for the most part, but I could use, LG could, I think, improve that a little bit too, because I don't know, just a little too sensitive, and sometimes like, clicks would kind of register, and then I don't know, it was a little bit of a mixed bag, I felt. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the ports and the port selection. You have HDMI and 2 Thunderbolt 4 USB-C ports. You have a headphone jack. You've got micro SD card on the other side with 2 USB-A ports. So a fairly good selection of ports to plug in peripherals, and especially work with external monitors, which I think is going to be a factor when it comes to using this, and especially if you plan on using glance, which I think works best when you have that kind of workstation going on. So yet again, I think it brings home again the point of this thing being useful for school or work. It is a workhorse that you're trying to get out of this thing, and that's where the battery comes in, because LG, even though it rates it at 17 hours, now you're going to get that. You will only get 17 hours or close to it if you're doing the bare minimum on this with a fairly mixed or moderate usage. I'm talking like, word processing, browsing, some photo editing, you're maybe media streaming, you're streaming music, movies, things like that. So I think a lot of the things that we would normally just do on a laptop anyway, I was able to crack 13 hours. It did depend on screen brightness. I had it at a fairly moderate level when I was doing it, so your mileage may vary depending on how, let's say, how loud the speakers might be, or how bright the screen is, what it is you're doing exactly. Do you have multiple apps open at the same time? A lot of variables come into play that affect battery life on any laptop, including this one. So I would say you could probably bet on between easily 11 hours to maybe 13, possibly 14 or more if you're really going easy on this. Those are good numbers. I mean, for a 16-inch laptop that is this light, that's a pretty good combination. I think a lot of people would probably take that, because again, if you're using this for work all day, you want it to last all day. A couple quick things about some of the internals. So you have an Intel Evo processor with its 11th generation, and then you have 16 gigs of RAM, as I mentioned, and my review unit had 512 gigs of storage, about 460 of which was actually free to use. There's quite a bit of bloatware on this. So once you get past that, there's enough there ultimately to make this a very serviceable laptop, and I think the Gram laptops have proven that they can do that. I certainly experienced that with a 17-inch before, so I feel like this is something that could really go to work for you, especially when your needs are more varied as opposed to really, really highly specialized. And that's my review of the LG Gram 16, the 2022 model for the Best Buy blog. I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.